Hello, and welcome to this RTS production focus on the wonder that is Spitting Image. I'm Benji Wilson, and I will be your host today. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the format by now, but we're going to start the session with a panel discussion and then move on to a Q&A with you, our lovely viewers, later on. To that end, we'd like you to submit your questions in the YouTube chat box, as it says there, throughout the session. I'm also delighted to say that I have a very exciting announcement to make first up, which is that Series 2 of Spitting Image will launch on BritBox UK on the 11th of September. And so, basking in the glow of that good news, I'm going to introduce our wonderful panel. Starting with Roger Law, co-creator and executive producer of Spitting Image. We also have Jeff Westbrook, showrunner and executive producer, Nana Hughes, commissioning executive for BritBox, Matt Ford, writer and voice actor, and Bert Tyler Moore, consulting producer and writer. Welcome to you all. Let's begin, shall we, by reminding viewers what Spitting Image is, in case they've had their head in the fridge for the last 30 years. We have a couple of eerily prescient sketches from the first series for you to enjoy. And so, Phil, if you could play our tape.
But Boris, you already spent £5 billion on a British satellite navigation system. Why do you want to chuck it and rejoin the European Union SatNav project?
Well, the British SatNav system has had mixed success.
Right. No, Nick's right. I mean left. Yes, this left. Oh bugger. It was that left.
What?
Turn around. Or indeed, don't turn around. Just carry on. Yes, onwards. You have arrived at your destination.
Gangs of hoodlums, people petrified in their own homes. The country's falling apart in Arran. If only I was in a position to do something.
You are the leader of the Labour Party.
Exactly. Powerless. I have no choice. I shall become a masked hero, a bringer of vigilante justice. But what dark creature of the night shall I choose as my symbol? That's it. The fox. The garbage-eating pest that strikes fear into the heart of every Tory. I better check with the NEC that foxes are kosher.
Give me the purse or I'll kick out your Invisaligns.
Piss off!
This party is over. I am Foxman, and I'm here to clean up these streets.
Masked vigilante, eh? I'm not afraid of you.
Nor should you be. I'm here to find a pragmatic solution which brings all sides together around a shared outcome.
A shared outcome? He's trying to kill me!
I understand the strength of feeling on this issue, which is why I'm proposing a royal commission.
It's time to skin the fox.
What? Do you have a super weapon?
No, it's something far more powerful. The Crime and Courts Act 2013. It gives judges at Crown, District and Magistrate level the power to defer sentencing in lieu of restorative justice.
He's asleep. You're a genius, badger lad.
It's Foxman.
Yeah, whatever.
It's All Hallows Eve. Spookius Maximus. The perfect night for a seance to summon the ghost of Winston Churchill. He'll tell us how to get out of this quagmire we've governed ourselves into.
The witch's brew's almost ready. In goes eye of puppy, other eye of puppy, rest of puppy.
All right, join hands. O mightiest Tory leader, Torius Imperator, come unto us and impart your wisdom, because we haven't got a bastard clue. Never surrender. Darkest hour.
No, no, no! You turn if you want to!
OMG, it's Margaret Thatcher, my hero.
I'm quivering in fear.
Right. I'm just tucking my shirt into my trousers.
Why have you summoned me, you snivelling weaklings?
We're having some trouble with the North.
Abolish it!
Maybe we can suggest that to the mayors during the next round of negotiations.
You're negotiating with Northerners? Oh, you cretinous wets!
This is so hot. If I had a pulse, it would be racing. I want to kiss her, him, it. Lips so sausagey.
What should we do about hungry school kids?
Take away their milk! Snatch it!
We've already taken away their meals.
Never take everything away. Make them feel grateful for what little they get.
Okay. About the EU, now that we've left it...
You left it? My God! What are you going to do next? Catch immigrants with nets? I was the Iron Lady, not the stupid twat. That does it. I'm coming back, taking over, and reshuffling you all into hell.
How do we get rid of her?
It says here our only option is an immediate blood sacrifice.
Hancock!
And it should be a virgin.
Hancock.
Do I get a sticker for being brave?
Another bloody U-turn.
What happened? What did Winston say?
He said to kill Hancock.
Now that's leadership. Pint?
As we all try to recover from that nightmare scenario, which also turns out to be our daily reality, let's talk to our panel. First question for Roger Law. Let's go back to the beginning. Why did you bring back Spitting Image after a good few decades away?
Well, I lived in Australia for a while. When I came back, I thought, my God. And what I wanted to do was to get to grips with Trump. And I thought a play, you'd have no censorship and you could make him a tweeting colon. That was what I really wanted to do. And people were queuing up to say no, they didn't want to do it. And then someone agreed, and further down the line, John 30 of Avalon got involved, and he was crazy enough to punt a pilot. Jeff came over from America, and it was a great deal of fun, and that's how it started.
And Jeff, we know you or previously knew you as a writer famous for The Simpsons, for Futurama. How did you get to Spitting Image? What did you know of it before?
Well, I remember the show from, some incarnations it had over here in North America. Actually, I had a meeting with John Thode, and John put me on the phone with Roger Law, and I thought, wow, this guy's a force of nature. A little scary, but huge passion, and I just thought this sounds like a kind of a fun project. And it's interesting. It's puppets they live in this odd space between animation and the real world, and I just thought you get a little bit of the best of both worlds. Some kind of I suppose reality, as we saw in those clips, lots of genuine reality. But they're visual like puppets, but they have a sort of connection to the real world. And I just thought it'd be a lot of fun. And so here I am.
And I guess same question for first for Matt, then for Bert. Again, how did you come to be involved in the project? And what were your thoughts when you heard that Spitting Image was coming back?
Firstly, as a punter, I was delighted. Absolutely chuffed that Spitting Image was coming back because obviously as someone who does political comedy, it was such a massive deal. And I couldn't believe it was coming back. Then to be asked to be involved, I've been doing stand-up for a few years and impersonating people like Trump and Boris and others. So to be asked to do it on Spitting Image really just was, I can't even say it was a dream come true. It was a dream I sort of never dared to dream, really. You just always thought, I don't know, it's just such a massive deal and it's such a wonderful thing to be a part of.
And how about for you, Bert?
I'd echo what Matt was saying, that it was such an institution, and it was such a big show when I was growing up and a student, and to be asked to be involved was such a compliment. But it was great as well to be involved along with Jeff, and to see that he had a slightly different take, like he was saying, coming with slightly more of a cartoon kind of a background, and I think that's added a new. I mean, it's still very much Spitting Image, but it's added a new kind of take to it as well, which I think is really exciting for the new series.
And for you, Jeff, I guess your approach. What did you, as a showrunner, what did you want it to be? What did you want it not to be?
Well, I was very excited about having it have a little bit of an international flavor. So sort of take advantage of the fact that, the world sort of 25 or 30 years on from the original series is more connected. And so, people all over the world are more aware of sort of this core group of celebrities, politicians. And I thought that would be, fun to sort of really get everybody in there. And also just, hey, let's do some satire about the modern world. I mean, there's lots of things to go after, and lots of, odd people with odd attitudes, and I think that's the fun.
Let's talk about the process behind designing and making the puppets. Roger Law, I think you have some slides, and I wondered if you would mind talking us through them.
Yes, I will. I'll be as quick as I can. The background to this is I earned my trade working for newspapers and political magazines. And if Spitting Image shows have achieved anything, they took the political cartoon from print into another medium, television. The process of making the puppets takes time, and it's craft-based, whereas television is basically talking heads. There's not another show like it. When it works, it's fun. And when you consider it also has to be marginally topical, all in all, it's fun sometimes. It's a hard show to get your head round, and it's a lot of work. Okay, next slide. So it starts with drawings. Everything starts with drawings. Greta, the writers all agreed that Greta would make a great TV weather girl. So there's the drawings, and then you go to a sculpted clay head, and they're life size. And then you make a mold, and then you take out the foam rubber head, which is below. So that's all of this. Probably with a fair wind, you can do it in about 8 or 9 days. Okay, next one. Like Boris, we needed a Hancock. So you've got their drawings and clays and the finished puppet. And that was pretty straightforward, because once the drawings have been shown to the showrunner, to Jeff, he picks out the ones he thinks we should go with. And so it's all nailed down, usually by the very first drawings that, we take to him. Okay, Taylor Swift. There are excellent women sculptors around, but women caricaturists in very short supply. So the solution has been to commission a French artist who is exceedingly good at caricaturing women. And as you can see, the finished puppet is almost attractive. That's unusual for Spitting Image. Okay, next one. Idris Elba was fun to make, good drawings, and a turnaround at the bottom of a sculpted head. And it's essential that we do that because we're all working on Zoom. A pediatrician once told me that babies recognize their mothers from the shape of her head. So you have to get that right as the puppet is on the move on the screen. The Queen. No, not that Queen. Elton John, well, you can't go wrong, really. All you need to do is to add the voice. It's all there from the drawing. Okay, the Queen. The Queen looks very strange bald, doesn't she? But as you see, the finished puppet head and the puppet itself, it all came together in the end. The Euros. Gareth Southgate, Alex Scott, and a fine bunch of lads. I really like the Southgate drawing. It's an excellent caricature. Now, Tim Davie. We're in the process of making Tim Davie into Boris's pet poodle. It was a lot easier to do than I imagined. He'll be a small lapdog that comes when he's called every time. Now, Caitlyn Jenner. We showed Jeff the drawings and he was curious as to what had happened to Caitlyn's penis. So we gave him a selection to choose from, as you can see in the top right-hand corner of the drawings. Okay, next. So we're doing a German television show called The Krauts Edition. So let's have a look at that. Next one up. Angela Merkel, the puppet maker, had the bright idea of making the wig lift off the head and spin round. And that's exactly what we did. Jürgen Klopp. He's my favorite, one of my favorite puppets. He's so positive and joyful. He really cheers me up. And back to the Euros, you've got Thomas Muller. Okay, next one. I was really surprised when the Germans suggested Hitler. Because Germany has some tiresome number of extreme right-wing politicians. Maybe their show intends some serious satire. As Peter Cook said, just like those wonderful Berlin cabaret clubs which did so much to stop the rise of Hitler and the Second World War. We shall see. That's it. Now remember, everybody, everyone over the age of 40 is responsible for their own face. Abraham Lincoln said that, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. It's interesting seeing that. You touched on it briefly. Yeah, go for it. I'm
just going to jump in and say, Roger, that when the Germans asked for Hitler, they said, "Can we please have 1938 Hitler before things went bad?"
And we said, "Heil Hitler." Yeah. No problem.
I mean, you touched on it, Roger, but I'm interested in how the ideas come to form with the puppet. So is it a writer will say, we've thought of a joke, make the puppet look or do this, or is it the other way round, or is it a bit of everything? So maybe that's one for
It comes from the writers mostly. It's not worth getting out of fucking bed without a script. But then when you start doing the puppet, things spring to mind. Like we're doing Savit Javit, and he looks exactly like Uncle Fester, the Charles Addams cartoon. And Jeff went with that, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I thought it was great. And then
it's visual things, isn't it? It's visual things that the workshop comes up with.
And also, I think it was one of the workshop people suggested making Alex Salmond look like Shrek, right?
That's correct.
And that's a really funny thing. And I remember that it was a caricaturist who came up with Michael Gove having a penis for a nose, which was
well, that had to happen, Jeff, didn't it? Really,
a delightful discovery. But I do think, as I recall, it was one of the writers suggested Angela Merkel's hair would spin around. So, and it's a great collaborative process because the caricaturists come up with often really funny ideas, and that kind of visual sense is super important. It's a big part of the show, and that's why Roger is so crucial, because like that's that big vision is all Roger.
Does it?
Well, it's very difficult.
Sorry, go on,
It's
Roger.
very difficult with the Zoom because, I mean, I made over 1,000 heads in the previous incarnation, and now I feel like a sort of superannuated conductor, because you know how it works, and in a workshop everybody joins in, and it's great. That is enormous fun. That's what I miss the most, and this is all done now exactly in the way we're doing this.
And so, with that in mind, you've got writers both from the US and from the UK working together on the scripts. I wonder for Matt and then Bert, how does that work? How are you, and what different comic sensibilities does each bring?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think you have a lot of freedom on this show, is the first thing to say, just to pitch whatever you want about whether you want a new puppet, whether you've got an idea for an existing puppet. So some of it is done individually, where you come up with an idea and you talk to Jeff about it. There are other meetings that we have where we do it collaboratively and people will bring different ideas and we'll knock it around. And then there are other rooms where you take existing scripts and you polish them up before they're fully finalized. So as a writer, it's a really enjoyable process because you get to be involved at every single part of it. You get to make suggestions for the puppets, you get to pitch ideas yourself, you get to add lines into other people's scripts, and you get to play around in general just forming ideas. So compared to other shows I've worked on, as a writer, this is by far the most fun.
And Bert, do you have to be a sort of knee-deep in political comedy to write for Spitting Image, or actually is it quite helpful to not be completely immersed in Westminster law?
That's another good question. Well, obviously you need to do your research and you need to check out the newspapers. But I think it's fun when you can get little sort of left field things into it that aren't to do with necessarily the super topical political things. Just like, for example, we gave Greta. Roger was saying she started off as a weather girl, but then we had a few other sketches where we saw her with her boyfriend, who we thought could be a scaffolder called Lee. And that's nothing to do with politics or anything topical. It's just we just thought that was funny, and so that's the great thing about the show. In the shop window, it's a topical satire show, but you can get all sorts of weird little quirky things in, and that's what I enjoy a lot.
The third part, obviously, you've got the puppets and you've got the scripts. You need the voices. Matt, you're our voice artist today. How do you go about finding voices, particularly ones that you haven't done before?
Well, you have to practice them. Is the slightly obvious answer. I mean, what's brilliant about this is obviously the voice has to sound like the person. So Boris and Trump, to take two examples, were people that I'd impersonated for a few years before the show started. But it kind of hits upon something that Jeff said earlier. You're voicing the person, but you're also voicing the puppet of the person. And the puppet of the person kind of has the spirit of that individual imbued in it, in all their grotesqueness. But it's also kind of a character itself. So there's an element to which you're voicing a fictional version of a real person. And just as the rubber is augmented and exaggerated, at times, so the voice can be. So my Trump that I would do on stage was far more like the real thing. Benji, I got to tell you, you're a great guy. You're very good people over there at the whatever it is you do. You're great people. And it would be more kind of like a standard Trump impression. But with Spitting Image, because of the way the puppet looked and the way it moved, the voice ended up being far more ludicrous and more almost like Cartman from South Park. A kind of, man, I don't want to do it. Jesus Christ. And it kind of had all this sort of yappy, weird shit going on with it, where it ended up being far more of a caricature than I'd ever intended because of the way the puppet moved. So it's rooted in what that person sounds like. But even within that, you've got a lot of freedom to just enjoy the silly sounds that people make.
The next question I was going to ask was about about freedoms that a streaming service allows for the program, but I've just had a message to say that apparently YouTube's copyright automated system took us off air for a couple of minutes, which seems right in the spirit of Spitting Image. So just to apologise to anyone watching, and apparently the on-demand viewing of the session is not in any way impacted, so it will all be there. Anyway, with that in mind, maybe Roger and then Nana, do you want to talk about what freedoms streaming did give the new series over perhaps a traditional broadcast run? So really for Roger, was there anything you couldn't do, or were there new things you could do this time round?
Well, it was very different because we had, when we did it for Central Television, ITV, we had our own lawyers who were private eyes lawyers, oddly enough. And they actually knew how to get stuff through. So I was always astonished at what we could do on television. That kind of show had not been done before, and they didn't quite know how to deal with it. So they usually let it out. But I worked on papers, and you knew exactly what you could and couldn't do. You know where the borders were. And sometimes you didn't censor yourself, because there's plenty of people who do that for you. And it got published, but mostly it was killed. I couldn't believe what went on. I thought that working for BritBox, we would have quite a lot of freedom, and indeed we've had a lot of freedom. But times have changed, and I'm an old man. And now you've got young people working who are incredibly woke, most of which I've sort of come round to. But it does make things difficult, because you want to make people laugh. You don't want to bloody irritate them. So you have to be careful. If you say one thing satirically and you mean another, really, there's a lot of people out there on the net that don't really know the difference, if you follow me. That's one of the problems, but it's our problem, and we're dealing with it.
And for you, Nan, I mean, presumably taking on commissioning Spitting Image again, there was an element of a gamble to that, or of a risk. What was the process behind saying, yes, we want that on BritBox?
Well, that was pre me being at ITV and BritBox, but I think the excitement of having a huge original on BritBox that has an extremely exciting back catalogue of characters that everyone remembers. I think, Roger, you said everyone over 40 definitely does remember and has such joy for. For me, coming into it in this time, and obviously with the events of last year, was quite nerve-wracking in a kind of, what are the puppets going to look like? What are the jokes? What are we going to say? Because the things that we could get away with in the 80s and 90s, we most certainly can't do now. So I didn't want to come in as the woke police going, you can't do this, you can't do that. So just working with Jeff and looking at, this is what we're saying, this is how it could be seen. What are we trying to say? What are we playing with? So that's been an interesting dance last year, but I think we found a good middle ground that works, that was still funny and not too woke. And I think we can push it a bit further this series, I think. But yeah, compliance has changed massively. The landscape has changed, you know, as Roger said, when they started. Basically, compliance didn't exist for TV. They just went for it and then apologised afterwards.
No, Nana's right.
Actually, we can't do that.
When
Sounds
we did
great.
the first shows,
the early shows, was that, Roger?
The script writers got caned because they said they weren't funny. They were very funny. They all went on and had fantastic careers. But people were so surprised by the puppets, they were not listening. It wasn't getting over because they didn't understand the language of Spitting Image. I don't mean the script itself, the combination of the visuals with the script. And gradually they learned it and they liked it. And I think that's probably what's happening with the millennials that watch this one.
And we touched on the fact there's a German version being commissioned. It's been an international hit as well. I wonder, perhaps for Jeff, why do you think the concept and Spitting Image itself travels so well?
Well, part of it is you can. Everyone likes to see their own politicians made fun of, and also everybody knows a core of characters. I mean, we do spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, who shall we make a puppet of? Who's going to be somebody that everybody around the, you know, not just in the UK for sure, but also elsewhere, will, you know, recognize and have an opinion about. And so I think that's part of it. I guess what Roger said to me very early on was to remember that in the end, it's kind of a Punch and Judy show. This is one of Roger's homilies to me early on, and so if they hate each other a lot, that's probably going to be pretty funny. And I've struggled to follow that advice as much as possible too. But I mean, I do think people like puppets around the world, and I can't explain why. It's an interesting question why you would like this kind of strange art form. But,
for Bert, maybe, and Matt, I suppose, the news cycle, as we all know, has increased in speed exponentially since the original show went out in the 80s. How does a satirical show keep up with the stream of events? Indeed, do you even try? So, Bert, do you want to go first with that?
Yeah, so every week we have, I think it's about 5 minutes of material that's just allotted to that week. So obviously there's other sketches which are sort of vaguely topical, that we've filmed and they're kind of in the bank. But each week there's 5 minutes of new stuff we can do, and that's, for example, the sketch you showed earlier of the cabinet summoning up Thatcher. That we came up with that week. So it's a show that allows you to do that, which is great.
And same to you, Matt, I suppose, as you've also worked a lot in political comedy. Again, do you find yourself flummoxed by events, or actually does the speed of the news cycle play to your advantage sometimes?
Oh, I think it's great. I never underestimate how satisfying it is to see a joke, particularly on a show like this that people understand. Viewers might not know exactly what goes on, but they know a lot more effort and artwork goes into this than just standing on a stage and telling a quick joke. Never underestimate the impact of that, of turning on the show on a Saturday and seeing a joke with these incredible works of art that's written and voiced and turned around in a really short space of time about something that might have happened the previous day. And not all the show has to be like that, but I think the impact of that is something very, very special. And to be able to do it on a show like this that has all those constraints, and when Series 1 was made during COVID, is incredible. And there were times where I watched it on a Saturday and there were jokes that were on there, that were stuff that happened in the previous 2 days. And that brings a real magic to it, I think. So I just think it's a huge strength that the show has.
And are you honing lines right up to the final edit? Is it an ongoing process to keep it as current as possible?
Yeah, we stick.
Do you want to go, Jeff? And then Matt?
I was going to say last year, when the very first episode dropped, that morning that we were delivering it to BritBox, so it was Friday morning, and we were in the very last stages of looking at the final cut, the final mix. The news came out that Donald Trump had come down with COVID, and so we had to jam something in super fast, and it was just a great little collaborative effort where we realized that we had some images of Donald Trump tweeting, and the director ran off and grabbed it, and then we repurposed it. So he was sitting in bed, he was tweeting some stuff. We had this image, and I went out to the writers and said, guys, we need some hilarious tweets from Donald Trump about him being sick. And like in the space of a half an hour, with the show due to be delivered to BritBox, in that half an hour, we managed to sort of slam in some tweets. It was a nerve-wracking and horrible experience, but it was, but like, it was a great example of collaboration. I remember Bert pitched some hilarious stuff, and then I remember we calling in Matt. No, really, and we got Matt on the phone. We woke him up and said, "You got to tweet us some lines. Just get in there and do stuff." So at our best, we were able to do that. The news cycle is very fast, and often the obvious joke has been made a lot of times by people on Twitter and everything like that. So our job is to sort of find a way to put it into a funny sketch that's got a bigger picture, maybe, and take advantage of the puppets and the great voice characterizations that we have to sort of maybe give a little bit of a twist beyond the sort of sometimes really obvious take. So that's our challenge and our goal. Doesn't always happen, obviously, but that's my fault. These guys are. I should shout out to Matt. I think all the sketches that you showed today were pitched or written by Matt, right? That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Oh,
were.
Matt,
Yeah, I think
you
so.
didn't
Yeah.
tell us that, Matt.
It's not for me to say, is it?
I
That's the
noticed
double-
someone was pushing them when the
it's the
choices were being
double
made. Just tell us, and similarly for Matt, when a new sketch comes up or a new idea, and you perhaps have to come up with a new voice. I mean, is it? You said it takes hours of practice. Are there occasions when you're like, right, I need that person by tomorrow at 5, or
Not really. There are a couple that you'd knock up a bit quicker. I mean, just on the back of Jeff's story there, when you're turning stuff around quick, obviously you kind of get an email and you have to send some ideas. But then obviously I'm very lucky that I get to voice some of these ones as well. So I recorded all of the things I did for the first series in this room on this microphone into this laptop. So I didn't go into any sound recording thing at once. So I'd come in here, having pitched some ideas, and then you link up with Jeff and that in the studio. And they say, "Oh, so Trump's ill. So as well as the lines you've got there, you have to make some noises like he's ill." And it sort of never occurred to me before working on a show like this that you'd have to make noises other than the script. So I do oh my God, I'm so sick. Pence, get me my tablets. And then have him go, oh God. And then there was the scene where Boris and Trump had a fight, and you have to do, they said, oh, you've got to do these noises if Boris is doing kung fu. You come here, I'm going to bloody well, I'm going to box your ears. I mean, I live in a flat. God knows what my neighbours think I do for a living, but it is great fun.
and I mean, similarly for you, Roger, and for the workshop, when a new idea comes up, how fast can you turn a new puppet around? How big a decision is it to say, right, we need to commission a new caricature, a new puppet?
You can turn them around quicker than we make them. I don't really want to, because we had to go truly global. I mean, good caricature is as rare as rocking horse shit now. And we've got Portuguese, we've got Americans, we've got Frenchmen, we've got Germans. And the sculptors, people that can model, were all trained by Madame Tussauds. So you have to nurse the caricature through these very skillful people. And the great thing about it is that everybody kind of wants to do it. I found a sculptor that makes things in Florence, very upmarket stuff. And I said, look, you won't want to bother with this fucking nonsense, but do you want to have a go? And he's ringing me up all the time for another one. He loves it. So I don't want to do them overnight, which we used to do before, because they're not very good. And they've got to be used over and over again. You may as well get it as good as you can right from the start.
But if the call comes in, I mean, if I said, Roger, I need this person.
You really want to do this, do you?
Yeah, and it has to happen. What's the limit?
You model it quick, you draw it quickly, you model it quickly, and you can make a 2-piece mold. And those things, and take a latex out, which isn't foam rubber, which is like a Wellington boot. And there really has to be a reason for it. It's got to be hot news. That makes it worth it. But making them really quickly for no good reason is crazy. It's a waste of money.
I wouldn't want to get too po-faced about it, but there's always a discussion with satire about how it serves some sort of societal need. Would you agree? And I guess maybe we'll start with Nana, perhaps, of why we need spitting image more than ever at the moment, given the political climate, the global political climate.
Well, I think we need it more than ever because, as Roger referenced, the globe has got smaller. We're all so connected at the moment, and we're all in each other's business and in each other's countries. And I think it's really important that the British sense of humour is put out there on a global platform. Actually, I think our take on what politicians are up to, and especially how mental ours are, I think it's really important for us to be able to laugh at them permanently.
And it's better than throwing your dinner at the television set, Benji. It really is.
Do you have that Jeff, perhaps, the idea that there's a sort of, and I know it's sort of antithetical to comedy, but there's some sort of just cause at the base of all this, that actually is perhaps serving a useful purpose?
Well, I would hate to sort of puff ourselves up to say that I'm not Jonathan Swift, but I mean, although I think I look like him a little bit. But Certainly, when I got involved, I did have the thought to myself, okay, this will be my chance to get my grouchy old man views out about what the hell's going on in the world. And so, yeah, at its best, there's a little bit of hopefully just reminding people not to take, everybody at their face value, at their, don't just take politicians at their face value. Don't take every issue at its face value. There's a little bit of something. There's always something going on, and behind everything, there's human foibles that are funny. And I hope that that's our, at our best, we're sort of at least pointing that out. That everybody's got their little hobby horses and their little personal, like I say, foibles that make really that's behind a lot of what goes on in the world. And there's something very funny about that. And so that's, I think, what I hope we can bring out. Crusading missions. I don't know if it's I'm not sure I'd send puppets on a crusading mission.
But it's a bit more basic, really. I mean, there's very few. There are lots of vehicles out there. Ask yourself how many, when you read it, you can believe a word of it. The newspapers are dying. They're desperate for advertising. The lawyers are all over it in the hope the paper can continue. I mean, personally speaking, if I want to find out what's going on with COVID, I read Private Eye. The rest of it's a load of bollocks. We're very lucky, Bentley. You work for a vehicle where you can do things you think are probably true, and you have a reputation. You know that Hislop is not Matt Hancock or any of Boris's boys. You can rely on it better. You can't even rely on the BBC anymore.
Have you had that, maybe one for Bert, just watching those sketches we showed at the top, it's bizarre how prescient, particularly the third one, was. Have you had those moments where you've written something trying to be outlandish and ridiculous, and it's turned out to have come true a few months later?
I don't know, to be honest. Generally, we're just trying to make funny stuff out of stuff that's happened that week. So I don't know if we're predicting stuff so much as reflecting stuff.
But not deliberately. But I mean, the sacrifice of Hancock is almost exactly what had to happen.
I see what you mean. Well, I suppose with Hancock, we'd nailed his character, I think, as the sort of the man who hides behind a pot plant. But I think was Roger saying earlier, who would have predicted that he would then turn out to have an affair? I mean, in the sketch we were saying he was a virgin. So he's Hancock's been on a little journey between series 1 and series 2. He's actually lost his virginity. So we'll have to build that into the next series.
Talking about the next series, just before we get some questions from the virtual floor, I wonder, Roger, Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about what we can expect from series 2? I think we've got some sneak peeks of new puppets that you might want to talk us through.
Off you go, Jeff.
We got a lot more footballers, right? Which we showed the image of those guys.
Yeah, let's get the footballers up there.
Yeah, so got Marcus, Harry Kane, we got Gareth Southgate, we got some of the match of the day people. We got Gary Lineker and Alex Ross, and so we'll definitely see more of those people.
We're leveling off the politicians on the show and bringing in people that actually know what they're doing, like the footballers of the Euro.
Yeah. Marcus Rashford is the official opposition right now.
Exactly.
So again, not wanting for you to give anything away from the upcoming series, but insofar as the process works, when the writers see those puppets, are you instantly thinking, is it the puppet that leads you to write the joke, or have you briefed the puppeteers, right, here's what we're thinking of doing with that character, off you go? Maybe for Matt, that one.
Well, it's a bit of both. Obviously, with Southgate, we haven't just sort of dreamt up the idea of having footballers. That's on the back of obviously England doing really well in the summer and realising that these are far bigger figures now, not just on the pitch but off it. So we're kind of led by the world in which we live. So after the back, obviously during the summer we've been working on the show and watching the tournament, and I think a few of us were pretty keen to have Southgate now. He's a bigger figure now than he was 2 months ago, and the same goes for Rashford and Kane. So you're led by the news, by pop culture, by sport, by the things that are in the world around you. If you're working on a show like this, you think, well, who should we be featuring? If you think of the last 2 months, really, specifically Rashford and Southgate, you couldn't pick two people more in the spotlight in Britain.
Benji, the puppeteers watch a lot of video, and it's the same trick as the writers and the artists. They caricature the way the puppet moves, or if it has mannerism, they emphasize it.
Is there ever any thinking along the lines of, I don't know, a figure like Rashford, or indeed with Greta Thunberg, that actually the public really like them, so maybe we don't go for people who are deemed to be the good guys, or is it the opposite? They're precisely the ones you should go for.
Well, Greta's an interesting one because you're right in a way. I mean, everyone loves her, so why should you be having a go at her? But that's where the kind of, in a way that's a little kind of it's a little spur to the imagination, and that's why we came up with this idea that she would have a boyfriend who was a roofer, and in the next series she's moved on. She's gone to college, and she may be leaving her roofer boyfriend, but at college she meets Malala, who's her sort of rival and is a bit of a mean girl. So I mean, these are all people who you shouldn't be taking the piss out of. And I don't think we are taking the piss out of them really, but we're just featuring them and just kind of putting them in this slightly odd situation.
The weird thing happened with Greta, because social media went potty because we were satirizing a little girl. And then Greta actually popped up herself and said she loved her puppet, and that was the end of that.
And in terms of... Sorry, go on.
I just want to jump on what Bert was saying. Sometimes what we're doing is taking the person's with their personality and imagine what would that person be like, at home or with the boyfriend. How does that? And that's a fun way to explore a person's personality rather than just going straight at here's what they say, here's their positions and stuff like that. So, and it's not meant to be hurtful. I don't think, right?
But I assume in some cases, not with the goodies as I'm terming them, but in some cases it is meant to be not personally hurtful, but it is meant to sort of make a point with a knife.
It should be unfair sometimes.
Yeah.
I hope.
I think it's probably a mixture, isn't it? With the politicians, you really want to get them, don't you? But with other more general celebs, it's you don't want to throttle them. You want to just make fun of them. You want to tease them a bit.
Right. Explode their vanities a little bit. Poke their bubble a little.
Little bit of mischief, eh?
So just before we get questions, can you give us any other teases as to who might be appearing, or is that putting you on the spot?
Well, let's see. We got Tom Cruise coming. We got it's all a blur of puppet faces in my head. Horrible puppet faces all over the place. Lin-Manuel Miranda doing a couple of rap songs. He can't help inserting himself into any possible situation and doing a rap song where he's the star. Who else do we have?
Ed Sheeran, Amelia.
Yep, heads back. We'll see our billionaires, Bezos and those guys, Bezos, Musk, they're back again for another crazy adventure. It's so funny. Last year we did a joke where Bezos's rocket was a penis. And like now it's like, oh my God, can you believe it? His rocket looks like a penis. It's all over social media. And you're like, yeah, no, it looked like a penis. It looked like a penis last year when we did it.
Do you I guess, do you think about the legacy of the show? Like, first of all, in practical terms, has any of the stuff from the old show, do you use the faces again? What happens to the puppets? That's a Roger question. And then I'll come on to the writers, but I wonder if you ever go back and look at what the humour was like in the first place, or whether that's dangerous. So let's start with Roger. Just ask about, have any puppets, do puppets get reused? Have they been in a lockup for 20
all
years?
those bloody puppets at Sotheby's and I bought a surfboard and went to Australia. They don't exist.
So there's no secret stash of Thatcher heads, or?
Oh, actually, I did keep that. I've got that, yeah. But most of them are gone. And the ones that we didn't flog are in the Cambridge University Library, in the archive.
There's some you kept, right? Because I remember last season, we have a bunch of generic puppets. They're just characters that they're not any particular, but they're just like, you got to have an aide or a waiter or something like that. And to make those last year, because we were kind of strapped for time, we did use some old puppets that you had, Roger, because I remember people saying to me, hey, wait a minute, that waiter, he looks like, and then they'd mention a British politician from the 1980s, and I'd say, he does? What the hell is that?
We did a show with the Russians, and they didn't have enough puppets. And I went in one day, this is in Moscow, and there were 20 new puppets, and we hadn't made them. And I said, where did you get them from? And the Russian said, free enterprise, Roger, free enterprise. And they just nicked them from somewhere and put them out. But I wouldn't worry, Benji. We made 125 puppets for the last series. And we're going to have to remind these bloody writers which ones have been made. So they write for many of them that never appeared.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead, Jeff.
Well, we got to schedule almost all the puppets you made, Roger. I think there was only a few we didn't manage to get done.
So I'm just being nasty, Jeff, am I?
Yeah, I think Benji, Roger and I are going to have a meeting after this meeting. We have some built-up tensions we have to resolve.
It's all that working with Punch and Judy that has made you want to slang it out. Let's get some questions from the Magic Chat box, and that is also a reminder for people to put some questions in the Magic Chat box. Let's start with, we have one here, which is, who was the hardest character to find a comedic angle for? And I'm guessing that's a writer's question.
I remember we had problems with Beyonce. Because she's just so perfect. And yeah, it's who else?
I think Keir Starmer was a tough one because he's so boring. And then Matt had the great idea to do the whole Foxman thing, where he could be boring but funny.
A lot of that was. Yeah, and Matt's great characterization really helped with that too. His voice is so funny.
Yeah.
And then we have a similar question, but based along the lines of with the puppets. Which ones was it hardest to get right, Roger?
I have to admit that because there aren't any female caricatures that I know of at the moment, quite a lot of females are difficult to do. Sometimes that's a real problem, and it goes out a couple of times to different people until we get it right.
And the arbiter of what's right, is that a collaboration, or is it, Roger, you decided the puppet's right, Jeff decided that?
No, I think that it's very simple. It's got to fucking look like them. There's no point if they don't. And you wouldn't get it past Jeff if you didn't know who it was.
I'm interested also in Jeff. Do you have to basically learn more about British politicians and British politics? And if you do, what's that been like coming across some of the quote unquote characters we have at the moment?
Yes, it may be a surprise to you, but I was not fully cognizant of Matt Hancock to the UK. So yeah, I certainly did have to jump into UK politics. But it was actually, I've got such a great bunch of writers like Matt and Bert who just know all the ins and outs and can just say, yeah, here's what's going on. Here's this guy's, here in a nutshell is what this person's personality is. So for me, it was really just fantastic to have all the UK writers who can kind of just in a second give a little précis of what these politicians are and what their characters are, and give us a place to jump into and go with them. So I mean, all credit to the UK writers, and it's been very interesting because politicians, it turns out, are politicians no matter what side of the Atlantic they're on, and what happens in the US happens in the UK and vice versa in many ways. So
we've got, I think, time for one more. This one says the panel mentioned Greta's. I think Roger mentioned Greta's reaction to her puppet. Have you heard from anyone else who you've parodied?
Well, Michael Gove said that he liked his.
Really?
But as usual, there's no way he can be telling the truth.
Yeah, I heard that interview, and the interviewer couldn't believe he said it. And he said, "You do realize that your face is a set of male genitals." But it didn't bother him. I don't think many things do.
I think a few of them realize they have to say, I think it's different with Greta, but I think certainly for people like cabinet ministers, politicians, people like Piers Morgan, they kind of feel they have to say they like it.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, I guess it's a recognition of a level of status. So the narcissist in them is probably relieved that they're on rather than they're not. But when you look at the state of how appalling we've made some of them look, there's no way they can really, deep down, be happy.
Well, there was always that story from the original Spitting Image, Roger, whereby didn't some of the politicians buy their own puppets or want to keep their own puppets, or have I completely made that up?
Oh, yeah, it was very funny. They sent people in to buy themselves. Paul McCartney hated his. I mean, I know he's not a politician, but he loathed his puppet, and that was bought by somebody in and got back to him so he could destroy it, probably.
Edwina Curry bought hers.
Edwina Curry bought hers. My favourite story is that Jeffrey Archer, that ghastly writer, he sent in photographs for us to make his puppets. We wrote back, said, "We're never going to make you." And then he was caught on a railway station giving money to a prostitute, and we had to.
Well, that seems an entirely appropriate note on which to end our discussion today. Just to say again that the second series of Spitting Image goes out on BritBox UK on the 11th of September. And thank you very much to our panel today for your time. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Benji.